Hey friends, so welcome to episode 4 of Just Whit. And yes, I'm filming this the same day that I filmed episode 3. I realized that I wanted to show you my process for making the charms. Like, I filmed quite a few of the steps over the last few days of me making the charms. And the only step that I didn't film is like sculpting the head, making the eyes, and like sculpting the lips. But I will show you like the tiny fine details of making the lashes. I will show you the steps I take to make the hair and glaze them and all that stuff. It's gonna be a cute little video, so I hope you enjoy watching my process. Okay, so right here I am adding eyelashes to the face, and I basically just roll the clay out into really tiny like lines and then use my X-Acto knife to cut them up. And then I use my X-Acto knife to like put them next to the eyes, as you can see here. It's a really delicate process. Okay, right here, I'm cutting out squares, which are going to end up being the back of the hair for the charms. And basically, I like to do this ahead of time before I start working on each one. Just cut out the perfect amount of squares for the set of charms I'm working on at the moment. And then I'll move on to doing circles. And the circles are going to become the puff puffs, and then I'll also cut circles in half to become like the little bang that's in the front. So as I mentioned, I will use half circles to make bangs. I actually made too many circles right here. Those ones off to the right, I won't need them for this little batch, but I will need them for some other charms on this round. So yeah, I cut the circles in half, and I'll just need a half circle per charm. Right here, I'm using translucent liquid Sculpey and an old paintbrush. And you basically use it as a bonding agent to make the hair stick, because the hair is not baked and the charm head is baked. And so just having non-baked and baked clay together, I just want to make sure that, you know, they have a chance to fully bond. And the translucent liquid Sculpey is the perfect medium for that. And so basically I just smush the little square onto the back of the charm. I like to use my razor to flatten out the little lumps there might be, rather than my finger, because they can get down close to the eye pin at the top of the head. And then I place my half circle on top, right in the front for the bang. Same thing, I use my razor to smooth it out. And get it real close to the eye pin, and that actually stops the eye pin from moving at all. It helps secure the eye pin. And I use a regular needle just to create the lines that kind of replicate the texture of what hair would look like if it was pulled upward into the puff puffs. And I do this before I add the puff puffs, so I'm not working around anything. Sorry, I'm a little off frame. I'm not used to creating anything with the camera directly in front of me. So I had to kind of like work around the camera. Then I do the same thing in the front, just creating little lines for texture for the bangs. Okay, so now I'm gonna add puff puffs to the head, right at the area where all the lines come together. And I try to make them as even as possible. I don't use the bonding agent here because it's clay that's not baked getting stuck on top of clay that's not baked. So I'm not worried about them not bonding. I use my dotting tool to create the texture of Afro kinky hair. And I just go in a random pattern, just kind of dot all over the puff puff. And this actually helps secure the puff puff to the head as well. So at this particular time, the charm would be considered finished and ready to bake. Of course, it's going to need face paint and glaze, but that happens after I bake it. So just adding a little more texture, and then I'll hang her up so she can be baked. All right, so I used this silicone putty brick or block or whatever you want to call it. I created it by molding it into a box that I had on hand, and I basically just hang the charms here, and I can hang 12 of them and bake 12 at a time. I have 2 of them, so I can bake 24 at a time. And yeah, that's how I keep them safe in the oven. So I wanted to show you my flower making process. If you follow me on Instagram, you got to see this already. But basically I just use my razor and I cut like little strips, and then I flatten the strips out. Try to make them as similarly sized as possible so all my roses can be the same size. And then, yeah, I just roll them into a cone shape and place them on top of charms' heads right in the center and create a little flower crown. All right, so this is me adding flowers to one of my charms. This one has a lock button, so I'm only going to be able to fit 3 flowers on her. Although the clay is not baked yet, I use the translucent liquid Sculpey to bond the flowers, just because, I don't know, it just gives me that sense of security that I know that the flowers are not going to fall off. At this point, I'm ready to bake my charms, and I use this special clay oven just so I don't get things mixed up with food and have to wait, you know, in case something's baking and I need to also bake charms. I cover them so that way the heat circulates evenly throughout the oven. Once the charms are baked, I used acrylic paint to make face markings on the mime charms as well as the clown charms. For the mimes, I use black acrylic paint, and I actually paint with a needle tool because it just really helps get those detailed lines, those really fine lines. I add some water to my paint because my acrylic paint is really thick. And I don't know why I chose to use my needle here to stir because it wasn't very effective. So I got a little wiser at one point and started using the back of a paintbrush handle. Much better for stirring. And then you can just wipe it off with a paper towel because acrylic paint wipes off of surfaces while it's still wet really easily. So now I'm ready to start painting. I grab my needle, same needle I used to make details on the hair, and I use this to paint lines on the face. Takes a really steady hand and a lot of patience, but I love it. It's so fun. Here I'm ready to glaze. I'm using Sculpey glass glaze. And I do this on all of my charms because it helps with just keeping dirt off the charm. Clay is oleophilic, which means it loves oil. So if you touch unglazed charms with your bare hands and you have natural oils in your hands, it can transfer to the clay and it can stain the clay, give it random shine. So I just give it a nice shine all over. This glaze takes 24 hours to fully cure. After 30 minutes, it's dry enough for me to handle them. So basically, while I'm painting, I use pliers to hold the eye pin, and then I place them on the same type of rack I use to bake my charms on. And then once they're dry enough for me to touch, I transfer them over to a tray lined with parchment paper. Alright, that's it. So until I film the next video, you can find me on Instagram as usual at Whitney Marie Anderson. And yeah, that's it. See you next time.